I was relaxing at my beach house when the security alarm went off at exactly 12 minutes past midnight. The guard, sounding nervous, said, "Your daughter-in-law is here with movers. She says she owns the house." I took a sip of my tea and smiled. Let her in, let her in. She's about to get a major surprise. I know what you're thinking. How can a 68-year-old woman react like this when someone is stealing her property right in front of her eyes? Let me explain something to you. Calmness is not weakness. Calmness is the most powerful weapon when you already know the ending of the movie. But before I tell you how I got to that moment, you need to know my full story. Because this is not a story of a victim. It is a story of patience, strategy, and justice. And if you want to know how a grandmother gave the lesson of a lifetime to the person who tried to take everything from her, subscribe to this channel because stories like this need to be told. My name is Carolyn Scott. 68 years of life, 40 of tireless work, 8 of widowhood. I built my fortune with these hands that now tremble a little when holding a mug, but that never trembled when I had to raise my family. That Friday morning, as the sky over Laguna Beach began to tint orange, I was on the terrace of my oceanfront home, a house I bought with the money from my retirement lump sum after retiring as the general accountant for Pacific Textiles. 40 years of logging every one of someone else's cents taught me the exact value of money and effort. The salty breeze messed up my hair as I held my mug of chamomile tea. I have a ritual. Every morning, before sunrise, I go down to the terrace with my terracotta wool blanket, the one my mother knitted before she passed away, and I watch the ocean wake up. It's my moment of peace, my moment to remember why I keep going. Then I heard the insistent, aggressive ring of the gate buzzer. It wasn't a friendly visitor's ring. Steve, my night guard, a man about 50 years old with a constantly worried expression, appeared running through the side yard. His flashlight bounced against his security vest. "Mrs. Scott, I apologize, but there's a moving truck at the entrance. And your daughter-in-law, Mrs. Victoria, she says she's here for her things, that the house is hers now." I didn't get up immediately. I took another sip of my tea. I felt the warm liquid go down my throat. I watched the waves crash against the rocks. "How many people did she bring?" I asked, with a calmness that surprised even me. "3 laborers, ma'am, and a large truck, one of those professional moving vans." I smiled. It wasn't a smile of joy. It was a smile of recognition. That moment you've been waiting for has finally arrived. "Steve, open the gate for them." "Ma'am, let them through. Let her in. Let her do everything she wants." Steve looked at me as if I had lost my mind, and maybe it seemed that way. Maybe anyone would think that an older woman, alone, giving up to being dispossessed, had simply resigned herself. But I knew something that Victoria didn't know. Something no one knew yet. Victoria, my daughter-in-law, the woman who married my only son Robert 5 years ago, the 36-year-old woman, beautiful like a magazine cover, cunning like a snake, ambitious like a hyena. When Robert introduced her to me, I wanted to believe in her. I wanted to believe that my son, after 2 failed relationships, had finally found someone who truly loved him. Robert was 43 years old. He worked as a civil engineer for a construction company. He earned well, but he never had a head for business. He was always kind, too kind. Victoria burst into our lives like a scented gale, gorgeous, educated, with that way of speaking that makes everything sound important. She claimed to work in digital marketing, but I never actually saw her work. At first, she hugged me, called me Mom Carolyn, and brought baked goods when she visited. But I'm not stupid. I never was. I noticed how her eyes scanned my house every time she came over, how she asked with too much interest about my retirement, my properties, my plans, how she whispered with Robert when they thought I wasn't listening. Now, as I heard the truck's engine entering my property, as I heard the hurried steps of the laborers, as I heard Victoria's authoritative voice giving orders, I remembered the exact moment I knew that this woman hadn't entered my family for love. It was 2 years ago, at a Thanksgiving dinner. Robert casually brought up the subject that I should facilitate the inheritance early. That way, we'd avoid taxes. Victoria nodded next to him, with that smile that no longer seemed warm to me, but calculating. That night, when they left, I cried. Not for the money, but because my son saw me as an obstacle between him and his future. But the tears dried, and in their place grew something harder, something smarter. I finished my tea. I stood up. I adjusted my ivory cotton robe and my slippers. I gathered my gray hair into a simple ponytail, and I walked toward the inside of the house, because Victoria was about to learn the most expensive lesson of her life, and I was ready to teach it to her. But what Victoria didn't know was that I had been preparing for this moment for months, and what she was about to discover would change everything. From the second-floor window, I watched Victoria direct the movers as if she were the owner of an empire. She wore tight jeans, a white silk blouse, and dark sunglasses, even though it was barely dawn. Her perfectly straight brown hair fell over her shoulders, always impeccable, always in control, or so she thought. That entire living room, she pointed toward my terrace. The teak patio furniture, it costs a fortune. The gray sofa in the main living room, the marble coffee table, everything of value goes into the truck. The movers exchanged uncomfortable glances. One of them, a young man wearing a baseball cap, asked, "Do you have documents proving this belongs to you, ma'am?" Victoria pulled a folder from her Louis Vuitton bag, authentic, of course, bought with Robert's money, and showed some papers. "Everything is here, a signed donation from the previous owner, all legal." A lie so massive it almost made me laugh from my window. You see, I need to tell you how all this started, how I ended up with a daughter-in-law capable of stealing from me while I was still breathing. I met Victoria 5 years ago at Robert's birthday party. He brought her on his arm, radiant, with that smile I hadn't seen since he was a child. She wore a red dress that hugged her figure, high heels, perfect makeup. When she greeted me, she took my hands in hers. "Mrs. Carolyn, Robert has told me so much about you. It's an honor to meet the woman who raised such a wonderful man." The right words, the right tone, the right smile. But I've lived 68 years, and one learns to read what's behind the smiles. Her eyes were studying me, not with affection, but with evaluation, like when you walk into a store and calculate if you can afford what you see in the display case. The first few months were pure theater. Victoria came to my house in Manhattan every Sunday. She helped in the kitchen, asked about my health, and brought flowers. Robert was delighted. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted my instinct to be lying to me. But then the subtle changes began. Visits became every 2 weeks, then monthly. Robert started canceling lunch plans with me because Victoria had planned something. When I called, he sounded rushed, distracted, always in a hurry. One afternoon, I confronted him. It was in my kitchen, 6 months after the wedding. Robert had come alone, which was rare by then. "Son, I feel like I'm losing you," I told him as I poured him coffee. He avoided my gaze. "Mom, it's not that, it's just Victoria thinks you're too invasive. She says we need space to build our marriage." Invasive. That word cut through me like a knife. Invasive for wanting to see my son? Don't take it personally. She comes from a different kind of family, more independent. As if loving your family were a weakness. I swallowed my pain. I smiled. I told him I understood. But that night, alone in my house, I cried until I had no tears left. My husband, Howard, had died 8 years ago of a sudden heart attack. Robert was all I had left, and someone was taking him away from me, piece by piece. The months passed. The distances grew. Robert stopped telling me about his life. I no longer knew if he had problems at work, if he was happy, if he was sleeping well. Victoria had built a wall between us, brick by brick, with soft words and poisonous smiles. And then the insinuations about money began. It was at a family dinner, 2.5 years ago. Robert and Victoria invited me to a fancy restaurant on the Upper East Side. I thought they wanted to reconcile with me. I arrived with hope in my chest. Victoria ordered expensive wine. Robert looked nervous. Halfway through dinner, she dropped the question with a sweet smile. "Mom, Carolyn, Robert told me you have 3 properties. What a blessing, right? It must be complicated to manage all that at your age. At my age, as if the 66 years I was then made me incapable." "I manage them just fine, thank you," I replied curtly. Of course, of course. I was just saying that, well, Robert is your only heir. And with inheritance taxes so high in the U.S., it would be smarter to make a lifetime gift. That way you avoid the government taking a large percentage. Robert looked at his plate. He didn't defend me. He didn't say, "It's not the time," or "My mother will decide that." Only complicit silence. "My properties are in a trust," I answered. "I am the sole beneficiary while I live. Afterward, they will pass to Robert. Everything is in order." Victoria pursed her lips. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. How organized. Although, don't you trust your own son? That question. That damn question that haunted me for months. Because there was the real poison. Making me feel guilty for protecting what I had built with 40 years of work. Making me feel as if not trusting her with everything immediately meant I didn't love my son. From my window, I watched Victoria now point to my art collection in the living room. Paintings I had bought on my travels, each with a story, with a memory. Those two, everything of value. One of the movers asked again, "Are you sure the owner authorized this? Because if not, do you want me to call the police and tell them you're obstructing a legal move?" Victoria's voice became sharp. "Do your job and I'll pay you double." The money. Always the money. That was Victoria. Beautiful on the outside, empty on the inside. And my son, my kind and good Robert, had fallen in love with the wrapper without seeing that the gift inside was rotten. I took a deep breath. I let her act. I let her become confident. Because every minute that passed, every piece of furniture she ordered loaded, every word she said in front of witnesses was one more piece of evidence. And I had learned something in 40 years of accounting. Numbers don't lie. Documents don't lie. The truth always comes to light when you know where to look. Victoria shouted toward the house. "And check the study. There must be a safe. She surely keeps the deeds and jewelry there." I smiled, because she had no idea what I really kept in that study, and she was about to find out. But there was something Victoria completely ignored, something that would change her look of triumph into an expression of absolute panic. I walked down the stairs slowly, without haste. Every step was a conscious decision. Every step brought me closer to the moment I had been waiting for months. From the foyer, I could see Victoria's back. She was still giving orders, oblivious to my presence. The movers moved boxes, wrapped lamps, disconnected the big screen television that Robert had given me last year for my birthday. Ironic, isn't it? He gave me that gift, and now his wife was here to steal it. But let me explain what was really at stake here. Because this wasn't just about a beach house or some furniture. This was about my entire life's work. I own 3 properties. 3. Each bought with my own effort, without anyone's help. The first, my family home in Brooklyn Heights in New York City. A 2-story house with a yard, 4 bedrooms, where I raised Robert, where I buried my husband Howard. Valued at about $267,000. Approximating 4,800,000 pesos, according to the last appraisal. My memories are there, the photos on the walls, the lemon tree we planted when Robert turned 5. The second, an apartment in Manhattan that I bought 15 years ago as an investment. I rent it to a foreign couple, $178,000, approximating 3,200,000 pesos in value. That monthly rent of about $1,778, approximating 32,000 pesos, helps me live with dignity, to not ask anyone for anything, to be independent. The third, this oceanfront house in Laguna Beach, my sanctuary, my place of peace, $306,000, approximating 5,500,000 pesos. I bought it with my retirement lump sum when I retired. 40 years working, calculating others' budgets, auditing accounts worth millions, while I myself lived modestly. And when it was finally my turn, when I received my lump sum of about $156,000, approximating 2,800,000 pesos, plus my savings, I decided to give myself this gift. A place to wake up seeing the ocean. A place where no one would tell me what to do. A place that was mine. Total net worth, about $750,000, approximating 13,500,000 pesos, plus bank savings, plus investments. Almost $833,000 in total, approximating 15 million pesos. For many, maybe not a fortune. But for a woman who started working as an accounting assistant, earning about $167 a month, approximating 3,000 pesos, 40 years ago, who was widowed and had to raise a son alone, who never spent money on luxuries, but on education and future. It was my dignity turned into figures, and Victoria wanted all of it. Not part, all of it. After Howard died, when Robert was 25 and already working, my lawyer advised me to set up a trust, something that would protect my assets but secure my son's future. "Carolyn, put everything in a trust," said Edward Vance, a serious man of 60 who had been a friend of my husband. "You will be the sole beneficiary while you live. No one can touch anything. When you pass away, everything automatically goes to Robert. Clean, legal, without excessive taxes." And that's what I did. I signed the documents. Everything was protected. I could use, sell, rent, or do whatever I wanted with my properties, but no one else could claim them, not even Robert. When I explained this to my son, he understood, or so I thought. "Mom, that's perfect. I don't want you to worry about these things. I just want you to live peacefully." Those were his words. 8 years ago, when he was still my Robert. Before Victoria. Everything changed 6 months ago. It was a Sunday. Robert and Victoria showed up unannounced at my New York City house. I was in the garden pruning the roses. Victoria carried a folder in her hands and an expression she no longer tried to disguise as friendly. "Mom, we need to talk," Robert said, without even greeting me with a kiss. We sat in the living room. Victoria opened the folder and took out some printed documents. "Look, Mom, Carolyn, Robert and I have been researching. If you gift the properties now while living, the taxes are much lower. And besides," she paused, calculated, "at your age, wouldn't it be better to simplify, not having to worry about managing all this? At my age." That phrase again. "I don't need to simplify anything. I'm perfectly capable." "Of course you are," Robert intervened, but his voice sounded rehearsed. "No one is saying otherwise. It's just that, well, Victoria and I want to buy a bigger house. We're thinking of having children soon. And what if we could sell the Manhattan apartment or take out a loan guaranteed by these properties?" There it was, the naked truth. They wanted my assets as collateral for their plans, for their life, as if my 40 years of work were simply an available resource for their whims. The answer is no. Victoria dropped her mask completely. "You don't trust your own son? What kind of mother does that? One who worked every day of her life to have something of her own. One who isn't going to give away her security just because someone asks for it." Robert stood up, furious. I had never seen him like that. "You are incredibly selfish, Mom. Everything I have, I owe to you, but now that I need your support, you turn your back on me." Those words broke me into pieces. My son, my only son, calling me selfish for not handing over everything I had built. Victoria put her hand on Robert's shoulder. "Let her go, dear. I see how she is. She prefers to hold on to her things than help her own family." They left, slamming the door. I stayed in that living room, trembling, with a pain in my chest that wasn't physical, but hurt more than any illness. That night I cried until dawn. Not for the money, but because I had lost my son. Because Victoria had achieved what she wanted, to turn him against me. But when the sun came up, something changed inside me. I stopped crying. I got up. I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw a 68-year-old woman with dark circles and wrinkles. Yes, but I also saw something else. I saw strength. I saw intelligence. I saw 40 years of experience dealing with numbers, with audits, with people trying to steal or cheat, and I knew I wasn't going to be a victim. That very day, I called Edward. "I need your help. Someone is going to try to take what is mine, and I need to be prepared." Now, standing in the foyer of my beach house, watching Victoria direct the looting of my belongings, I remembered every step I had taken since that day, every document I had hidden, every recording I had saved, every piece of evidence I had collected. Victoria finally turned around, saw me standing there in my robe and slippers, and smiled, a smile of victory. "Carolyn, what a surprise to see you here." I didn't say anything yet. I just watched her. And in that silence, she made her first mistake of the morning. She thought my silence was surrender, but what she didn't know was that every second that passed, every word she said, was digging her own grave. Victoria walked toward me with that confidence only held by those who think they've already won. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor. She stopped 3 feet away, crossed her arms, and tilted her head with an expression of false concern. "Carolyn, did you sleep well? You look confused." Confused. What a convenient word. "I am perfectly clear, Victoria. I see you brought help." She let out a soft, almost maternal laugh. "Oh, sure. I know it must be difficult for you to process this. That's why I came early, so as not to put you through a hard time. Remember the papers you signed a month ago? The donation. This house is now in my name, legally." She offered me coffee, in my own house, as if she were the hostess and I the guest. But I need to backtrack. I need to tell you about that dinner. The dinner that broke me but also woke me up, because that's where I understood how far this woman was capable of going. It was 3 months ago, a Friday night. Robert called me, which was unusual by then. His voice sounded almost cheerful. "Mom, Victoria and I want to invite you to dinner. We haven't spent family time together in a long time. How about that nice restaurant in the Upper East Side you like?" My heart lit up. Maybe, I thought, maybe things could get better. Maybe Victoria had reflected. Maybe my son missed me as much as I missed him. How naive I was. I arrived at the restaurant wearing a wine-colored dress I saved for special occasions. I carefully styled my hair. I put on the pearl necklace Howard gave me for our 20th anniversary. I wanted to look nice. I wanted Robert to be proud of his mother. When I entered, I saw there were more people than I expected. At the long table were Victoria's parents, Frank and Linda, a middle-class couple who had always treated me coldly. Also there was Victoria's sister Danielle, with her husband, and 2 more couples I didn't know, but whom Victoria introduced as intimate family friends. 12 people. An intimate dinner had turned into an event. Victoria greeted me with a hug that smelled of expensive perfume and falsehood. "Mom, Carolyn, so glad to see you. Sit here next to me." She placed me in the middle of the table. Robert was at the other end, curiously far away, as if I had been placed in the center of a stage. We started dinner. I ordered a simple turkey and mashed potatoes. The others ordered expensive dishes, wines that cost over $55, approximating 1,000 pesos, per bottle. I drank sparkling water. The conversation flowed normally. They talked about travel, business, gossip about people I didn't know. I felt out of place, but I tried to smile, nod, and participate when I could. Then, between the main course and dessert, Victoria raised her glass. "I want to make a toast, to family, to the bonds that unite us." Everyone raised their glasses. I raised my glass of water. "And also," Victoria looked directly at me, "I want to express my concern for Mom Carolyn." The restaurant didn't go silent, but our table did. All eyes turned to me. "Concern?" I asked, feeling that something bad was coming. "Yes, my dear. Robert and I have noticed that you've been forgetful lately. You confuse dates, repeat stories, sometimes you don't remember conversations we had recently." My stomach clenched. What was she talking about? "I don't know what you mean." Victoria placed her hand on mine with that condescending softness that adults use with small children. "Don't be embarrassed. Please, it's normal at your age. My grandmother started the same way. First small lapses, then, well, you know." Linda, her mother, nodded with feigned sadness. "It's true. Senile dementia is terrible. My aunt suffered from it. It started exactly like that." "I do not have dementia." My voice trembled, but I tried to keep it firm. Robert, from the other end, intervened for the first time. "Mom, no one is saying you have it, just that you should get some tests, as a precaution." Danielle, Victoria's sister, added with a saccharine voice, "It's just that we worry about you, Carolyn. A woman alone, managing properties, finances, and if you get confused about something important, you could lose everything." There it was, the true intention, to paint me as incapable, as senile, as someone who needed others to take control of her life. One of Victoria's friends, a man with glasses and a suit, who I later found out was a lawyer, commented almost casually, "In cases like this, the best thing is to establish a legal guardian, someone to manage the assets, until the person, well, until they recover or other measures are taken." I realized it at that moment. Everything was planned. This scene was not a reconciliation. It was a public ambush, a humiliation designed for respectable witnesses to see a confused elderly woman, to build a case that would justify taking control of my assets. Victoria continued addressing the guests. "That's why Robert and I want to convince her to sign a power of attorney, for her own security. That way, if something happens, if she gets confused or needs help, we can act quickly." Looks of pity pierced me. They saw me as a problem, as a stubborn old woman who wouldn't accept her deterioration. I tried to speak, to defend myself, but my throat was closed. Tears fought to escape, and I couldn't let them, not in front of these people, not to give them that satisfaction. "I don't need any guardian," I managed to say. "I'm perfectly fine." Victoria sighed, as if dealing with a spoiled child. "That's exactly what all patients say in the early stages. Denial is part of the process." Robert said nothing. My son, my only blood relative, was sitting there, letting his wife destroy me in front of strangers. And his silence hurt more than any words. I got up from the table. I left my napkin on the plate. I took my purse. "Excuse me, but I don't feel well. I'm leaving." No one tried to stop me. Well, Victoria made a dramatic gesture. "See, she gets upset easily. Another symptom." I left the restaurant with the little dignity I had left. I called a taxi, and the entire ride home, I cried. I cried for my lost son. I cried for the cruelty. I cried because I felt small, humiliated, helpless. I arrived at my empty house. I took off the wine-colored dress and threw it to the back of the closet. I took off the pearls. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a destroyed woman. But that night, between the tears and the insomnia, something inside me hardened. I refused to be a victim. I refused to let this woman steal not only my assets, but my dignity, my history, my worth. The next morning, I made 3 calls. First, to Edward Vance, my lawyer. Second, to a private investigator whose name a friend had given me years ago. Third, to my family doctor, Dr. Franklin, to have him perform every possible cognitive test and document that I was in full control of my mental faculties. If Victoria wanted a war, she would have it. But it would be a war she wouldn't see coming. Now, standing in my beach house, watching Victoria smile, believing she had won, I remembered every second of that humiliation, and I was filled with an icy calm, because pain teaches you, and I had learned well. "Do you want that coffee, Carolyn?" Victoria asked, pointing toward the kitchen as if it were hers. I smiled. For the first time in months, I smiled for real. "No, thank you. I prefer to wait for my guests to arrive." Victoria blinked, confused. "What guests?" And right at that moment, the gate buzzer rang. The buzzer rang once, twice, insistently. Victoria looked toward the door, then at me. For the first time that morning, I saw a shadow of doubt cross her face. "Who else is coming at this hour?" I didn't answer. I just walked toward the entrance with slow, deliberate steps. Steve had already opened the gate. I heard an engine, then another, steps approaching. But before I tell you who arrived, you need to understand how I prepared for this moment. Because justice doesn't come on its own. Justice is built, documented, planned with patience. That morning after the humiliating dinner, I woke up with swollen eyes but a clear mind. I made myself a batch of homemade apple cinnamon coffee, the kind my mother taught me to make. I sat in my kitchen and took out a notebook. For 40 years, I kept accounts. Numbers, audits, evidence. I knew how the world of documents, proofs, and records worked. And if my job had taught me anything, it's this. The truth always leaves a trace. You just have to know where to look. I wrote 3 names in that notebook. Edward Vance, trusted lawyer, Dr. Armando Franklin, my doctor of 20 years, Mark Saunders, private investigator, 3 pillars to build my defense. Edward arrived at my house that same Monday. He's 68 like me, perfectly combed gray hair, always in an impeccable suit. He had been a college classmate of Howard's, an honorable man. I told him everything. The dinner, the accusations of dementia, the pressure to sign powers of attorney, Robert's distance. Edward listened without interrupting. When I finished, he adjusted his glasses and said, "Carolyn, this is a classic pattern. They are building a case to declare you incompetent and seize control of your assets. We've seen this before. Older people with assets, ambitious relatives. What can I do? First, we need to document your full mental capacity. No judge can declare you incompetent if we have recent medical studies proving the opposite." That same afternoon, I went to Dr. Franklin. He performed all the exams: mini mental state, memory tests, complete cognitive evaluation. A week later, I had the results in my hands. 68-year-old patient with completely normal cognitive function for her age, no signs of deterioration, oriented in time, space, and person, excellent working memory, intact judgment capacity. I saved those documents like gold. They were my shield against Victoria's lies, but I needed more. I needed to know who the woman who had wormed her way into my family truly was. Mark Saunders arrived at my house on a Thursday afternoon. He's about 55, former police detective, now a private investigator. A friend had given me his contact years ago when he helped her sister with an infidelity case. "Mrs. Scott, what do you need to know?" he asked, taking out a small notebook. "Everything. I want to know who Victoria Mendoza was before she met my son. Her previous relationships, her debts, her history. Everything you can find." Mark nodded. "I'll warn you, this takes time. And it costs. I don't care what it costs. I need the truth." I paid a retainer of about $2,222, approximating 40,000 pesos. Mark began his work. Meanwhile, I was doing my own silent investigation. Every time Robert and Victoria visited me, I recorded the conversations on my phone. I would leave it on the table, seemingly forgotten, but recording every word. I recorded every call where they pressured me about the properties, every derogatory comment about my age, every insinuation that I was losing my mind. I also installed discrete security cameras in my New York City house, small, almost invisible. In the living room, the dining room, the entrance. Edward advised me to do it. If they try to force you to sign something, if they yell at you, if there's any kind of coercion, you need proof, he told me. 3 weeks passed. Then Mark called me. "Mrs. Scott, I need to see you. I found important things." We met at a quiet downtown coffee shop. Mark placed a thick folder on the table. My heart beat fast. Victoria Mendoza, 36 years old, originally from Los Angeles. And here's where it gets interesting. He opened the folder. Inside were photographs, printed documents, reports. Victoria was married before, from 2015 to 2018, to an Orange County businessman named Oscar Bernard. He was 52 when they married. She was 26. He showed me wedding photos. Victoria looked radiant, exactly the same as when she married Robert. Same calculating smile. The marriage ended in a contentious divorce. Oscar accused her of manipulating him into putting properties in her name, of emptying joint bank accounts. There is a fraud lawsuit that never prospered because they reached a private settlement. He paid her about $111,000, approximating 2 million pesos, to leave and leave him alone. I felt the air leave my lungs. $111,000? Uh-huh, and there's more. Before Oscar, she had a relationship with a widower from Miami. It lasted 6 months. He was also older. He also had properties. The relationship ended abruptly when the man's children confronted her with evidence that she was selling items from the family home without authorization. Mark took out more papers. Victoria has debts, many. Credit cards, about $43,000, approximating 780,000 pesos in total. 4 different cards, all maxed out. She also owes money to private lenders, at least $11,000 more, almost $55,000 in debt, and she was living as if she were a millionaire. Does Robert know this? Mark shook his head. "I doubt it. I also investigated your son, ma'am. Robert has a clean credit history, stable income. but since he married Victoria, he took out a personal loan of about $22,000, approximating 400,000 pesos, and another of about $16,600, approximating 300,000 pesos last year. All that money disappeared. My son was indebted because of her, swallowing up debts he didn't even know he had, and the final blow. Mark took out screenshots of WhatsApp conversations. I managed to access conversations between Victoria and her sister Danielle, and between Victoria and a close friend. He read some messages. Every word was a knife. "Danielle, the old lady won't let go of a dime, but it doesn't matter. I already found a way. I'm going to make her sign a donation. I'll convince her she's losing her memory. Robert is a useful idiot. He does everything I tell him. His mom has almost $833,000 in properties. If I can get her to gift just one, this boring marriage will have been worth it. I'm not going to wait for her to die. I have debts to pay now. I'm going to pressure her until she gives in." Tears streamed down my cheeks as Mark read. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage. "How did you get these conversations?" Mark smiled slightly. "I have my methods, ma'am. The important thing is that this is solid evidence of her intentions." "Is it legal to use this?" "In a civil trial for fraud or coercion, yes, it can be used. It wasn't obtained through illegal wiretapping. It was, let's say, a source close to Victoria shared them with me." I didn't ask more. I didn't want to know. I took all that information to Edward. We sat in his office and reviewed every document, every conversation, every piece of evidence. "Carolyn, you have a solid case," he said. "If Victoria tries anything, if she pressures you to sign, if she seeks to declare you incompetent, we have what we need to defend you. But more than that, we have what we need to counterattack." "What do you suggest?" Edward leaned back in his chair. "We wait. Let her make her move. The more confident she is, the more mistakes she will make. And when she makes the ultimate mistake, we act." And that's how I waited. Weeks. A hunter's patience. Until a month ago, Victoria made the move I was waiting for. She arrived at my house with a man she introduced as Mr. Harrison, a specialist in notary procedures. They carried updated trust documents, very professional papers, with seals, with complicated legal language. "We just need your signature here, Mom, Carolyn. It's to update the beneficiaries for your protection." The cameras recorded everything. I read every line carefully, and what I saw chilled my blood. It wasn't an update. It was a direct donation of the Laguna Beach house in Victoria Mendoza's name, worded to look legal, but with hidden defects. I signed. Yes, I signed. But as I finished, I took a picture of the supposed Mr. Harrison's ID. That same afternoon, Edward investigated. It turns out that Mr. Harrison didn't have a current professional license. He had been a lawyer, but his license was revoked 3 years ago for fraud. The documents were fake. The procedure was fraud. We filed a criminal complaint, but I asked Edward not to execute it yet. "Let me set the perfect trap for her," I told him. "I want her to get confident, to believe she won." And now, watching my real guests arrive at the door of my beach house, I knew that moment had come. Victoria was about to discover that the mouse she thought she had cornered was, in fact, the cat. The door opened, and the pieces of my strategy entered, one after another. First, Edward Vance, with his leather briefcase and that serious expression that commanded respect. Behind him, Mark Saunders, the investigator, carrying a box of files. And finally, 2 people who made the color completely drain from Victoria's face. Detectives from the local police, a woman and a man, both with official IDs hanging from their necks. Victoria took a step back. The movers stopped moving furniture. The silence was instantaneous. "What? What is this?" Victoria stammered. Edward stepped forward, placing his briefcase on the dining room table with a dry thud that resonated like a judge's gavel. "Good morning. I am Edward Vance, legal representative for Mrs. Thou, Carolyn Scott, and these officers are here to investigate an alleged crime of fraud and document forgery." The lead detective, a woman about 40 years old with her hair pulled back in a strict ponytail, took out a notebook. "Mrs. Victoria Mendoza, correct?" Victoria nodded, unable to speak. Her confidence had evaporated like the morning dew. We need you to show us the documents that attest to your ownership of this property." Victoria searched desperately in her Louis Vuitton bag. She pulled out the folder with trembling hands. She handed it to the detective. But I knew exactly what it contained, because I myself had signed those papers. By the way, let me explain the most important moment of my strategy. The moment I let Victoria believe she had won was exactly 32 days ago, on a Tuesday afternoon. Victoria arrived at my New York City house with that man she introduced as Mr. Harrison. He was tall, about 50, in a cheap gray suit and a worn briefcase. He smiled too much. His eyes avoided direct contact. I had already activated the hidden cameras. Every word, every gesture would be recorded. "Mom, Carolyn, what a joy to see you." Victoria kissed my cheek, leaving a lipstick mark that felt like poison. "Look, I brought Mr. Harrison. He specializes in trust procedures. Robert and I thought it would be good to update some documents." "For your security?" "For my security. How convenient." The supposed Mr. Harrison spread the papers on my dining room table. Documents with seemingly official seals, with dense legal language, with those long paragraphs that make people just look for the signature line and get it over with. "Mrs. Scott, this is a routine procedure. Basically, we are updating the beneficiaries of your trust so that in case of any eventuality, the transition is quicker and more efficient." I took the documents. I read them slowly, very slowly. And there it was, hidden in the 8th paragraph of page 3. "The granting party fully and without reserve gives the property located in Laguna Beach, California, to Mrs. Victoria Mendoza, who accepts said donation in this act." It wasn't an update. It was a direct property transfer, a gift disguised as a procedure. "It says here that I am donating my Laguna Beach house." I pointed to the paragraph. The fake lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "Well, technically, yes. But it's a procedure to simplify the future inheritance. The taxes will be lower if it's done during your lifetime. Your son advised this. Right, Mrs. Victoria?" Victoria nodded with that sweet smile that already made me nauseous. "It's for your own good, Mom, Carolyn. That way Robert and I can help you better. And when you need something, you won't have to worry about the house anymore. We'll take care of it." Translation: when you die, it will be ours. But better yet, it will be ours from now on, and you'll simply disappear. I looked the supposed lawyer in the eyes. "May I see your professional license?" He turned pale. He fumbled in his briefcase. "Ah, sure, of course. Here it is." He showed me an ID. I took my phone, as if I needed my reading glasses to see better, and discreetly took a picture of it. I also photographed his driver's license that I managed to see in his open wallet. "Everything seems to be in order," I said in the voice of a tired old woman, the role they wanted me to play. I signed. Every page, every initial, every flourish. Victoria could barely contain her excitement. Her eyes were shining. The fake lawyer quickly put away the documents. "Perfect. In a few days, you will have your certified copy, and the new deed will arrive in approximately 3 weeks." They left in a hurry. Victoria kissed my forehead as if I were a good girl who had just finished her homework. "Thank you, Mom, Carolyn. You'll see that this is for the best." As soon as I closed the door, I called Edward. "She's fallen into the trap. I have everything recorded." That same afternoon, Edward investigated the so-called Mr. Harrison. His real name was Haroldson Miller. He had been a lawyer until 2021, when the Bar Association revoked his license for document forgery in an inheritance case. 3 years disbarred. He couldn't practice legally. The documents he made me sign had no validity whatsoever. They were decorated paper. Worse yet, it was a crime. Aggravated fraud, forgery of public documents, usurpation of profession. "Carolyn, we can proceed immediately," Edward said. "With this, we can put her in jail." "No," I replied with a calmness that surprised even myself. "Not yet. Let her get even more confident. I want her to make her biggest mistake, to expose herself completely, so she has no way to deny it." "Are you sure? The more time passes, the more complicated it can get." "I am sure. I know this woman. She won't be satisfied with just having the papers. She'll want the house. She'll want to come take possession, and when she does, that's when we'll catch her red-handed." And I was right. 3 weeks later, the fake documents arrived by messenger at my New York City house. Fake certified copies, fake seals, an impressive setup. Victoria had contacts in the world of fraud, that was clear. She called me that same afternoon. "Mom, Carolyn, the papers have arrived. Everything is ready. Robert and I are planning to go to Laguna Beach this weekend to check some things in the house. You know, since it's our responsibility now." "Of course, dear. Go whenever you want." "You won't be there this weekend, right?" "No, I plan to stay in New York City. I have a doctor's appointment Monday." A lie. I would be in Laguna Beach, waiting for her. Now, standing in my living room, watching the detective review the fake documents page by page, I felt deep satisfaction. Edward approached me and handed me a folder. I opened it. Inside were the real documents. The true deeds to my house, registered with the county, in my name, within the untouchable trust. "Detective," I said with a clear, firm voice, "those papers in your hands are fake. They were prepared by a disbarred lawyer who posed as an active professional. I signed under false pretenses, believing it was a routine update. I have recordings of the entire conversation that prove the fraud." Mark Saunders opened his box and took out a laptop. He connected it to my big screen TV, and there, on the large screen, the video began to play. Victoria and I sitting at my dining room table, the fake lawyer lying about the procedure, me asking specifically about each clause, them assuring me it was routine, that it was for my protection. And then, the golden moment when the fake lawyer put away the papers and Victoria told him, believing the camera wouldn't catch it, "How long until we can sell?" 2 months maximum. I'll make you a fake deed, but one that passes superficial checks. With that, you can sign a purchase agreement and get money from an advance buyer." Victoria on the screen was smiling. In my living room, Victoria was trembling. The detective looked up. "Mrs. Mendoza, you are under arrest for the crimes of fraud, document forgery, and criminal conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." Victoria exploded. "This is a trap. Carolyn forced me to sign. She's senile. She doesn't know what she's doing." Edward took out another folder. "The medical studies. Perfectly legal, certified, with recent dates. Here are my client's cognitive evaluations, performed 2 weeks ago by 3 different specialists. All conclude full mental capacity. Do you also want to see the recordings of the dinner where you publicly accused her of dementia without any proof?" Mark put on another video. The dinner at the Upper East Side restaurant. Victoria with her speech about my supposed dementia. The guests nodding. Robert silent. "This is called premeditated defamation," Edward continued, "building a false case of incapacity to justify asset dispossession." Victoria searched for arguments, but she had none. Every defense she tried was crushed with evidence. Documents, videos, recordings, testimonies. Then she did what all people like that do when cornered. She cried. "It wasn't my idea. It was Haroldson, the lawyer. He convinced me. I just wanted to help Robert. We have debts. We needed money." "Oh, really?" Mark took out another envelope. "These debts?" $43,000 in credit cards, all spent on clothes, trips, restaurants. None of that was for Robert, was it? He showed her the bank statements. Purchases at luxury stores, trips to Palm Beach, beauty treatments for over $2,200, approximating 40,000 pesos, all charged to cards Robert didn't even know existed. "And here," Mark continued, relentless, "your conversations with your sister Danielle, where you say, word for word, 'Robert is a useful idiot. His mom is the one with the money.'" Victoria collapsed. She fell onto my sofa, the same sofa she had ordered packed up half an hour ago, and I, for the first time in months, felt like I could breathe fully. But there was still someone missing, someone who needed to see all this with his own eyes. Victoria's phone rang. It was Robert. I could see his name flashing on the screen. She didn't answer. She was paralyzed, sitting on my sofa with her hands trembling, her makeup beginning to run with the tears. But I took my phone. I dialed my son's number, the number I had called for months without getting anything more than curt answers or outright silence. "Mom?" His voice sounded confused. "Victoria sent me a weird text half an hour ago. She said she was in Laguna Beach. What's going on?" "Robert, I need you to come to the beach house. Now. It's urgent." Are you okay? Did something happen? For the first time in a long time, I detected genuine concern in his voice, as if a part of the Robert I knew still existed beneath all the layers of manipulation. I'm perfectly fine, but you need to see something that will change everything you think you know. There was a long pause. I'm on my way. I'll be there in an hour and a half. I hung up. I looked at Victoria. She looked at me with pure hatred. There were no more masks, no more fake smiles or sweet words, just the naked truth of who she really was. You're a snake, she hissed through gritted teeth. A bitter old woman who can't stand to see her son happy. Happy? I repeated calmly. Do you call it happiness to put him in debt without his knowledge? To plan to steal his inheritance? That inheritance belongs to him. It's his right. You're just the temporary custodian of money that should be his. There it was, her true philosophy. To Victoria, I wasn't a person. I was a temporary obstacle between her and the money. The detective interrupted. Mrs. Scott, we need your formal statement, and we need Mrs. Mendoza to accompany us for processing. You're going to arrest me? Victoria stood up, hysterical. You can't arrest me. I didn't do anything. She signed voluntarily. Edward stepped forward with his professional, icy tone. Mrs. Mendoza, there is evidence of the following: conspiracy to commit fraud, use of forged documentation, premeditated defamation, and association with a disbarred professional to commit crimes. These are serious offenses, and yes, you will face criminal charges. Victoria turned to me, desperate, changing tactics like a chameleon. Carolyn, please, think about it. I'm your son's wife. If you put me in jail, you destroy Robert. Is that what you want? To destroy your own son? That question, that final attempt at manipulation. I walked toward her. I looked her directly in the eyes. And I spoke with a voice I didn't recognize as my own because it was stronger than it had been in months. You already destroyed my son. You turned him into someone I don't recognize, someone who yells at his mother, who calls her selfish, who allows her to be publicly humiliated. You put him in debt. You isolated him. You manipulated him. I'm not going to destroy Robert. I'm going to save him from you. The words hung in the air. Victoria had no reply. The movers, who had been paralyzed this entire time, started unloading the furniture back inside. One of them, the young man with the cap, approached me. Ma'am, please excuse us. We didn't know this was a theft. She told us it was a legal move. She showed us papers. It's all right, son. You were just doing your job. You are not responsible for anything. The three movers worked quickly, returning every object to its place. The living room was my living room again. The terrace was my terrace again. My house was my house again. Meanwhile, Mark Saunders prepared all the evidence in chronological order. Documents in labeled folders, USB drives with the recordings, certified copies of everything. Mrs. Scott, he said, this is more than enough not only to defend you, but to countersue. You could demand compensation for emotional distress, for defamation, for the stress caused. I shook my head. I don't want her money. I never wanted money. I just want my dignity back, and I want my son to wake up. An hour passed, then another. The sun rose higher in the sky. The sea breeze entered through the open windows. I had made coffee for everyone. The detectives took notes. Edward reviewed documents. Mark organized evidence. And Victoria waited, guarded, in silence. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Robert called again and again. Finally, we heard the sound of a car braking sharply in front of the house. Hurried footsteps, the door opening. Robert burst in like a hurricane. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled as if he had put it on in a rush. He searched for Victoria with his eyes. He found her. Then he saw me. What is going on here? Mom, why are there police? Why? He stopped when he saw the complete scene. The detectives. Edward with his briefcase, Mark with his laptop open, the movers finishing up the furniture. Someone explain to me what the hell is happening, he demanded. Victoria got up from the sofa and ran toward him, hugging him, crying. Robert, your mother is accusing me of horrible things. They want to arrest me. Help me, please. Robert looked at me over Victoria's head, confused, expecting me to say this was a misunderstanding, but it wasn't. Robert. My voice came out softer than I expected. You need to sit down. There are things you need to see. Things you need to know about the woman you married. What are you talking about? Victoria told me you signed a donation, that the house was for us. Did you back out now? Son, I never donated anything. I was tricked. Your wife and a fake lawyer made me sign fraudulent documents, and that's just the beginning. Robert shook his head, incredulous. No, Mom, you're confused. Victoria wouldn't do that. Confused? Edward intervened. Your mother is in full control of her mental faculties. We have evaluations from 3 different specialists. What your mother has, young Robert, is evidence. A lot of evidence. Mark turned the laptop toward Robert. Please look at this. And the video began. The first one, Victoria and the fake lawyer in my dining room. The lies, the deception, the signing under false pretenses. Robert looked at the screen, pale. Victoria tried to take the laptop away. Don't watch that. It's edited. I swear. But Robert pushed her aside. He kept watching. Video after video. The dinner at the restaurant where they accused me of dementia. The conversations with her sister calling him a useful idiot. The bank statements for credit cards he never authorized. The debts. The lies. And finally, the worst of all. The recording where Victoria talked to the fake lawyer about selling my property as soon as possible. How long until we can sell? 2 months maximum. Robert fell into a chair. His face had gone through every possible emotion. Confusion, denial, anger, pain. Now, only devastation remained. Victoria. His voice was barely a whisper. Is all this true? She continued crying, but she didn't answer. She couldn't. There was no possible defense against the evidence. You used me? All this time? You only wanted my mother's money? Silence. Answer me, Robert yelled, and I had never heard him yell like that. Victoria finally spoke, but her voice no longer held sweetness, only bitterness. So what if it was? Your mom has money. We have debts. It's not fair that she has so much while we— Don't say we, Robert interrupted her. I didn't have those debts. You created them. You spent the money. You lied. He stood up. He walked toward me. And for the first time in almost 2 years, my son truly looked at me as if waking up from a long and painful spell. Mom, his voice broke. What have I done? And in that moment, I realized that getting my son back was going to hurt as much as losing him. Robert dropped to his knees in front of me. Tears ran down his face uncontrollably. He was the image of a destroyed man, someone who had just discovered that his entire life for the past 5 years had been a lie. Mom, forgive me. Please, forgive me. I wanted to touch him. I wanted to hug him like when he was a child and came crying with scraped knees. But something inside me still hurt too much. Wounds don't heal instantly, even if the culprit apologizes. Robert, stand up, I said with a firm voice. Don't kneel. I never wanted this. He stood up, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. He looked at me with reddened eyes. I called you selfish. I yelled at you. I let them humiliate you at that dinner and I didn't say anything. How can you even look at me? Because you are my son, and because she manipulated you. But that doesn't erase the pain, Robert. It doesn't erase it. Victoria, from her place guarded by the detectives, let out a bitter laugh. What a touching scene, the heroic mother and the repentant son. But don't play the victim. You have money while other people— Shut up! Robert turned toward her with a coldness I had never seen in him. Don't speak again. You have no right. Just then, the buzzer rang again. Steve appeared at the door, nervous. Mrs. Scott, there are more people outside. They say they're Mrs. Mendoza's family. I looked at Edward. He nodded. I called them myself. We need witnesses to all of this, and they need to know who their relative really is. Let them in. 3 people entered. I immediately recognized Linda, Victoria's mother, a woman about 60, with auburn-dyed hair and a perpetually worried expression. Behind her came Danielle, Victoria's sister, 32, with a look of genuine surprise on her face. And finally, Frank, the father, a stout man with a gray mustache. Victoria? What are you doing here?" Linda looked around, confused. "You told us Carolyn gifted you this house, that you wanted us to come see it because you were moving here." Victoria paled even more. "Mom, Mrs. Linda," I intervened. "Your daughter not only did not receive this house as a gift, but she tried to steal it from me through fraud and forged documents." "What?" Linda put her hand to her chest. No, my daughter wouldn't do that." Mark Saunders stepped forward with his laptop. "Would you like to see the evidence?" For the next 20 minutes, Victoria's parents and sister watched everything. Every video, every document, every conversation. And with every piece of evidence, their expressions changed from disbelief to horror. Danielle was the first to explode. "Victoria, you told me Carolyn was senile. You made me believe you were helping her. And now I see that it was all a lie. You used me. I appear in those videos as an accomplice." "It's not what it looks like," Victoria tried to weakly defend herself. "It's not what it looks like?" Danielle showed her phone. "Here are your texts. Robert is a useful idiot. The old lady won't let go of a dime. Those are your words." Frank, who had remained silent, approached his daughter. His voice was deep, charged with disappointment. "Victoria Elena Mendoza, we raised you with values. Your mother and I worked all our lives to give you an education, to teach you to be a good woman. And this is how you repay us, by becoming a thief?" "Dad, Don't call me Dad." The man's voice was low. "I don't recognize the woman I see here. This is not my daughter." Linda cried silently. She approached me with hesitant steps. "Mrs. Scott, I don't know what to say to you. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know any of this. If I had known—" I took her hand. She was an older woman like me, a mother like me, and I could see in her eyes the same pain I had felt, the pain of seeing your child become someone you don't recognize. "I know, Mrs. Linda, you are not to blame for your daughter's decisions. But I am responsible. Something we did was wrong, something we didn't teach her well." Danielle continued yelling at Victoria, letting out years of accumulated resentment. "You were always like this, even as a child, always wanting what wasn't yours. Remember when you stole my best friend's boyfriend? When you forged Dad's signature to take money from his account? Mom always forgave you everything. Always forgave you everything. And look at us now," Mark interrupted, showing more documents. "And there's something else the family should know. Victoria was married before to an Orange County businessman. The marriage ended when he discovered her emptying bank accounts. He paid her $111,000 to leave him alone." Linda staggered. Frank had to hold her up. "You were married before?" The mother looked at Victoria as if she were a stranger. "You told us Robert was your first husband. You told us—" "I told you what you wanted to hear!" Victoria finally spat out the truth with venom. "Because if I had told you the truth, you with your moralizing wouldn't have supported me. I needed this marriage. I needed this opportunity." The silence that followed was deafening. Frank turned to the police detectives. "Officers, do what you have to do. We are not going to defend her. We are not going to pay for lawyers. We are not going to visit her if she goes to jail. Because this woman is no longer part of our family." Victoria screamed. "Dad, you can't say that. I'm your daughter." "My daughter died today. The one standing here is a criminal." Those words fell like a final sentence. Victoria completely broke down, crying hysterically. But no one went near to comfort her. Not her family, not Robert. No one. The detective spoke in a professional tone. "Mrs. Mendoza, you need to come with us. You will be held without bail while the full case is investigated. The charges are serious, and there is a risk of flight." "No, please!" Victoria looked directly at me. "Carolyn, please drop the charges. I beg you. I'll do anything. I'll leave. I'll disappear. But don't put me in jail." I approached her. I looked her in the eyes, and I spoke slowly so that every word would be recorded. "Victoria, you had many opportunities. You could have respected me. You could have loved my son genuinely. You could have built an honest life. But you chose the path of lies, fraud, and manipulation, and decisions have consequences. So, you're not going to forgive me? Forgiveness is between you and your conscience. I am just making sure that justice is served." The officers handcuffed her. Victoria screamed, cried, pleaded. But they took her out of my house, Out of my house. The house I had built with my effort. The house she tried to steal from me. When the door closed, silence returned. Robert was still standing, motionless, looking toward where his wife had disappeared. Linda and Frank sat on the sofa, devastated. Danielle trembled with contained rage. Edward placed his hand on my shoulder. "Carolyn, that was very brave. Not many people dare to go this far." "It wasn't bravery. It was necessity. The necessity for dignity." Robert approached again. This time, he didn't kneel. He stood in front of me, shoulders slumped, with the posture of someone who has lost everything. "Mom, I know I don't have the right to ask you for anything. But is there any way to fix this? Any way for us to go back to—" I didn't let him finish. "Robert, the path back is long. It's not fixed with an apology. It's fixed with actions, with time, with demonstrating that you truly change. I'll do whatever it takes. Then start with this. Seek therapy. Go to a counselor who will help you understand how you got here, how you allowed yourself to be manipulated. Work on yourself. And when you are ready, when you have truly done that internal work, then we'll talk." He nodded, the tears returning. "I love you, Mom. I never stopped loving you. I got lost." "I know, son. I know." But the most difficult decision still remained. What to do with all of this? Because revenge was never my goal. Justice, yes. Robert stood in front of me trembling, not from the cold, but from something deeper, from the weight of understanding that he had been blind for years, that he had traded his mother for an illusion. Linda broke the silence from the sofa. "Mrs. Scott, my husband and I want to pay you something, for the damages, for the suffering our daughter caused you." "We don't have much, but—" I held up my hand, stopping her. "I don't want your money, Mrs. Linda. You are not to blame for an adult woman's decisions. Keep your savings. You will need them more than I do." Frank stood up with difficulty, as if his legs barely supported him. "My wife is right. Something we did was wrong. Victoria was always different. Since she was a child. She lied easily. She manipulated situations to get her way. We thought she would mature. That marriage would change her." "Marriage doesn't change anyone," I said softly. "It just reveals who they really are." Danielle, the sister, was still standing by the window, looking at the ocean. She spoke without turning around. "I knew something was wrong. I knew it since Victoria showed me photos of this house and said it would soon be hers. But when I asked her how, she got angry. She told me to stop getting into her life, and Her voice broke. "I preferred not to see. I preferred not to ask uncomfortable questions." She turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I appear in those videos, in that horrible scene where we let her humiliate you." I laughed. I nodded when she said you were losing your memory, and I did it because Victoria has always been convincing. She always knew how to make people believe what she wanted. "You are not the first person to fall under the spell of a manipulator," I told her, "and you won't be the last." Robert had remained silent, but now he spoke with a hoarse voice, as if every word cost him physical pain. "I need to say something. I need everyone to hear it." He stood in the center of the room. We all looked at him. "Victoria manipulated me. That's true, but I let her do it. I chose to believe her when she told me my mother was controlling. I chose not to question when we started accumulating debt. I chose to stay silent at that dinner when they humiliated her." Tears ran freely down his face. "And do you know why I did it? Because it was easier. It was easier to have a wife who told me what to think, what to feel, what to do. It was easier to blame my mother for being complicated than to admit I was a coward." "Robert, don't say that," I tried to interrupt. "No, Mom, I have to say it. I was a coward. When Dad died, you took care of everything. The funeral, the debts, supporting me while I finished college. I never had to be truly strong because you were strong for both of us. And when Victoria appeared, she became another person who made decisions for me." He wiped his tears violently. "I'm 43 years old, and I just realized I've never been a complete man. I've always been someone's son or someone's husband, but never Robert. Just Robert." The silence that followed was heavy, full of painful truths. Mark Saunders, who had been quietly organizing documents, spoke. "Young Robert, the first step to change is recognizing the problem. You've taken that step. The rest come after." "But maybe it's too late." Robert looked at me with hopelessness. "Maybe my mom can never forgive me, and I wouldn't blame her." I walked toward him. I put my hand on his cheek, just like I did when he was a child. "Robert, you are my son. You will always be my son. But the relationship we had broke, and to rebuild it, we need time. We need you to prove with actions, not with words, that you really changed." "What do you want me to do?" I took a deep breath before answering. "First, seek professional help, a therapist, someone to help you understand how you got here. Second, clean up the financial mess Victoria left. Those debts are yours now. I'm not going to pay them. You contracted them. You pay them. Third, you need to live alone. Learn to be yourself, to make your own decisions, not to rely on someone else to think for you." Robert nodded with every point, like a student taking notes on the most important lesson of his life. "And after that?" "After that, when you've done all that, when you are truly a different person, then we'll talk about rebuilding what we had." "How long?" "As long as it takes. Maybe months, maybe years." I saw the pain in his eyes, but I also saw acceptance. He knew there were no shortcuts, that the damage was deep and real. Edward interrupted with his professional tone. "Robert, there's also a legal issue. Victoria contracted debts using your name, loans that you signed for but that she spent. Legally, you are responsible. We are talking about approximately $39,000, approximating 700,000 pesos, between credit cards and personal loans." Robert paled. "I don't have $39,000. "I know. That's why you need to restructure your financial life. Talk to the banks, negotiate payment plans. It's going to be difficult, but it's your responsibility." "And the divorce?" "I already have the papers prepared." Edward pulled out a folder. "Express divorce on serious grounds. Victoria will have to sign from where she is. And here is the important clause. She waives any asset claims against you or your family. Nothing. Zero. She leaves with what she came in with, which was nothing." Robert took the papers with trembling hands. "I thought I loved her." "You loved the idea of her," I said softly. "The mask she wore. But the real person underneath that mask, you never knew her, because she never let you." Frank approached Robert and placed his hand on his shoulder. "Young man, my daughter caused you a lot of harm. As a father, I feel responsible. If you need help finding a good counselor, my brother is a psychiatrist. I can give you his contact." Robert nodded gratefully. "Thank you, sir." Danielle also came closer. "Robert, if you need someone to talk to, someone who understands what it's like to live in Victoria's shadow, I'm here, not to replace anyone, just as someone who was also her victim." I was surprised to see compassion in Victoria's sister, but it made sense. She too had lived her whole life comparing herself, competing, feeling less than her perfect sister. Edward's phone rang. He answered briefly, nodded several times, and hung up. "That was the police. Victoria has been booked. They denied her bail because there is a risk of flight. She will remain in pretrial detention throughout the process. They estimate the trial will take between 6 and 8 months." "And what will happen to her?" Linda asked in a trembling voice. "If everything is proven, and with the evidence we have, it will be proven, she is looking at between 3 and 7 years in prison. Aggravated fraud, document forgery, criminal conspiracy. They are serious felonies." Linda covered her face with her hands. Frank hugged her, but he too cried silently. Seeing these parents suffer broke my heart. They hadn't done anything wrong. They had just had the bad luck of raising someone born without a moral compass. "Sir, ma'am," I said, "you are welcome to stay in touch with me if you need to. I know this is difficult. Losing a child, even through their own decisions, hurts just the same." Linda looked at me through her tears. "Why are you so kind to us? Our daughter tried to destroy you." "Because I am a mother, and I understand the pain of loving someone who disappoints you. I understand what it is like not to recognize the person you raised." Those words resonated in the room. Robert sobbed. Frank pressed his lips together. We all understood in that moment that we were, in different ways, victims of the same person. Mark began packing his equipment. "Mrs. Scott, my job here is complete. All the evidence is backed up on 3 USB drives. One for you, one for Edward, and one for the district attorney's office. Plus, the files are on the cloud, password protected." "Thank you, Mark. Your work was impeccable. I only did what you hired me to do, find the truth." The movers had finished putting all the furniture back in place. They approached timidly. "Ma'am, everything is back where it was. Do you need anything else?" I gave them a generous tip. They were not to blame for anything. When they left, only Robert, Victoria's family, Edward, Mark, and I remained. Robert approached one last time. "Mom, I'm going to leave. I need to process all this." But first, he pulled a keychain from his pocket. "This is from the New York City house, the one Victoria and I shared. I'm going to move out. I'm going to look for something smaller, cheaper, something I can afford by myself. And when I'm settled, I'll let you know, just in case, someday you want to visit me." I took the keychain. It was a small St. Jude medal that I had given him when he moved out of my house. "Keep St. Jude. I think you need him more than I do." Robert put it back in his pocket. He gave me a hug, a desperate hug, like someone saying goodbye without knowing when they will see someone again. "I love you, Mom. Never forget that." "I love you too, son. That's why I let you learn this lesson." And as I watched him leave, with his shoulders slumped but his gaze a little clearer, I knew the hardest part was just beginning. Forgiving. 3 months later. I woke up in my beach house to the sound of waves crashing against the shore. The same terrace, the same ocean, the same salty breeze. But something had changed. I had changed. I made my chamomile tea and went outside with my terracotta wool blanket. The sun was just beginning to paint the sky orange and pink. I sat in my favorite chair and took a deep breath. It had been 3 intense months. 3 months of legal statements, testimonies, signatures, and documents. 3 months of sleepless nights, painful memories, of healing wounds I thought would never close. Victoria's trial had progressed quickly. With all the evidence we presented, her defense lawyer could barely do anything. She pleaded guilty to reduce the sentence, 5 years in prison, not half of what she deserved. But something was better than nothing. Robert. Robert had kept his word. He moved to a small apartment in Brooklyn Heights, 2 bedrooms. Simple, nothing luxurious. He sent me photos. It was almost empty, just the essentials. "Starting from scratch," his text message said. He found a counselor, Dr. Walsh, Frank's brother. He sent me updates every 2 weeks, not details of the sessions, just so I knew he was still going. Session 6 completed, learning a lot about myself. He was also paying his debts. He had negotiated with the banks, monthly payments that consumed almost half his salary. He lived modestly, no luxuries, no excesses. He had tried to visit me twice. Both times I told him not yet, that I needed more time, and he accepted it without complaint. "I understand, Mom. When you're ready, I'll be here." Victoria's family had become something unexpected. Allies. Linda called me every week. We talked about simple things, recipes, the weather, television shows. We never mentioned Victoria. It was as if we had tacitly agreed that the topic was forbidden. Danielle visited me once. She brought coffee and a pastry. We sat on this same terrace. "Thank you for not hating us," she said. "Many people in your place would have cut off all contact with the entire family." "You are not Victoria. I don't bear her sins on your backs," Danielle cried. She told me what it had been like to grow up in the shadow of a sister who always got what she wanted, who manipulated her parents, who never faced consequences. "Part of me is relieved," she confessed, relieved that she is finally facing the consequences of her actions. It's horrible to say, but it's the truth. It's not horrible, it's human. My phone vibrated. It was a text from Edward. "Carolyn, everything is finalized. The trust remains intact, all properties secure. Victoria can claim nothing now or ever. You can sleep peacefully." I smiled. Sleep peacefully. It had been so long since I had. But there was something else I had decided to do, something I had been thinking about for weeks. That afternoon, I called Edward for a meeting. I also summoned Robert. It was time. They both arrived at my New York City house 2 days later. Robert looked different, thinner, with some gray hairs he didn't have before, but with clearer eyes, as if a fog had lifted. "Mom," he greeted me with a careful hug, like someone touching something fragile. "Son." We sat in the living room. Edward opened his briefcase. "Carolyn requested this meeting to discuss the future of your assets. Robert, your mother wants to make some important changes." Robert paled. "Mom, if this is about disinheriting me, I understand. I won't fight it. Not after everything that happened." I raised my hand. "It's not about disinheriting you, Robert. It's about making sure that what I built is used correctly. Listen before you speak." Edward took out documents. "Your mother has decided to modify the will and the trust. The properties remain within the trust. She remains the sole beneficiary while alive. But upon her passing, things will change." He handed Robert a copy of the document. He began to read, and I saw his expression change from confusion to surprise. "The family home in New York City," I continued, "will pass directly to you. It's your home. It's where you grew up. It makes sense for it to be yours." "Mom, I don't—" "Let me finish. The Manhattan apartment will be sold at the time of my death. The money from that sale, approximately $178,000, approximating 3,200,000 pesos, will be divided into 2 parts. One half for you. The other half will go to a foundation I am creating." "A foundation?" Edward intervened. "The Carolyn Scott Foundation for Senior Financial Protection. It will help older adults facing financial abuse from relatives. Free legal advice, psychological support, temporary shelter if necessary." Robert looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Mom, that's beautiful. It's necessary, because I discovered that my case is not unique. There are thousands of older people being dispossessed, manipulated, declared incompetent by ambitious relatives, and no one defends them." "And the Laguna Beach house?" Robert asked. "This house," I touched the table gently, "will also be sold. The full amount, $306,000, approximating 5,500,000 pesos, will go to the foundation, so it has sufficient resources to operate for years." But that means I will only inherit the New York City house and about $89,000. "Correct. Of the almost $833,000 I have, you will inherit approximately $333,000, approximating 6 million pesos, in total if we count the value of the family home. The rest will go to help other people." I saw the conflict in his face. Part of him, the selfish part that Victoria had nourished, felt it was unfair, but another part, the part that was learning to be better, understood. "It's fair," he finally said. "More than fair. After everything I did, I should let you give everything to the foundation." "This is not about punishing you, Robert. It's about my money making a real difference. And besides," I pulled out another document, "there is one condition." "Condition? For you to receive your share, you must comply with this for the next 5 years. 1. Continue in regular therapy. 2. Keep your finances in order without irresponsible debts. 3. Volunteer at the foundation at least 10 hours a month. And 4. Rebuild our relationship. Not in a rush, not forced, but genuinely. If I don't meet those conditions, your share also goes to the foundation, and the New York City house becomes the foundation's headquarters." Robert remained silent for a long time. Then he nodded. "I accept all the conditions." "Don't accept them for the money, Robert. Accept them because you really want to change. I accept them because I want to be the man you deserved as a son, the man Dad would have wanted me to be." Those words broke me. The tears finally came, tears I had been holding back for months. Robert knelt in front of me. He took my hands. "Mom, I know the road is long. I know I can't erase the damage with pretty words, but I promise you on my father's memory that I will do the work. I will be better. I will earn back your trust." I hugged him. For the first time in years, I hugged my son, feeling that he was truly my son again. "You're already earning it, Robert. Little by little, you're already earning it." 6 months later. The Carolyn Scott Foundation opened its doors in a rented office space in Manhattan. 3 lawyers, 2 counselors, and a social worker. Robert fulfilled his volunteer hours every Saturday, helping with administrative tasks. We had already handled 16 cases. 16 older people who were being dispossessed, manipulated, and abused by their own families. And in 10 of those cases, we managed to reverse the damage. Linda volunteered too. She coordinated the emotional support group. "I need to do something good with the pain my daughter caused," she told me. Danielle donated monthly. Not much. Her salary was modest, but it was something. Robert and I had dinner together every Friday. In simple places, not fancy restaurants. Just comfort food and honest conversation. Little by little, we were rebuilding what was broken. One afternoon, while reviewing foundation papers at my beach house, the doorbell rang. It was Robert, unannounced. "Son, what a surprise." "Mom, I needed to see you. I needed to tell you something." We sat on the terrace. He looked at the ocean with a serious expression. "Today marks 1 year since that day. The day everything exploded. The day I woke up. I know. And I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for giving me consequences, but also opportunities. Many mothers would have simply cut off all contact. You are my son. Cutting you off would be cutting off a part of myself." Dr. Walsh gave me an exercise last week. He asked me to write a letter to the person I had hurt the most in my life. Obviously, it was you. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. He handed it to me with trembling hands. "You don't have to read it now, but I needed to give it to you." I opened the envelope. The letter was 3 pages long. Tears stained some words. I read in silence while Robert watched the sea. The letter was a complete catharsis. Every memory of his childhood, every moment when I had sacrificed something for him, every time he disrespected me and now remembered it with shame, every therapy session revealing layers of guilt, of manipulation he had suffered, of responsibility he now accepted, and at the end, a promise. "Mom, I can't give you back the years we lost. I can't erase the words I said to you, but I can give you something, the rest of my life being the son you deserve. Not perfect, because I'm still human, but present, honest, yours. I love you. I have always loved you, even when I didn't show it. Your son, Robert." I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. I looked at Robert. "Come here." He approached. I hugged him tightly, like when he was a child having nightmares. "I forgive you, son. Completely. I no longer carry the weight of resentment." Robert sobbed on my shoulder. "I don't deserve your forgiveness. No one deserves forgiveness. That's why it's called grace, and I choose to give it to you." We stayed like that, embracing, while the sun set over the ocean, mother and son, broken but healing, wounded but forgiving. Today, 2 years after that morning when the alarm went off, I sit on my terrace with my chamomile tea and my terracotta blanket. The Carolyn Scott Foundation has helped 83 people, 83 families where justice was restored. Robert is engaged to a good woman, an elementary school teacher named Patricia. He introduced me to her 6 months ago. She is simple, honest, hardworking, and she looks at him with genuine love, not with eyes that calculate assets. Victoria is serving her sentence. I haven't visited her. I don't hold a grudge, but I also have no need to see her. Her chapter in my life is closed. My properties are secure. My will is updated. My son is healing. And I recovered something more valuable than money. I recovered my dignity. I recovered my peace. I recovered the ability to sleep soundly, knowing that I was not a victim, but a warrior. That I did not let myself be destroyed, but that I built something better with the broken pieces. I take a sip of my tea and smile at the ocean, because the true wealth was never in the $833,000. The true wealth was in having the courage to defend myself, the wisdom to plan strategically, and the grace to forgive without forgetting. I learned that a mother's love is unbreakable, but it doesn't mean being trampled on. I learned that patience is not weakness. It is the most powerful strategy. I learned that justice sometimes delays, but when it arrives, it is worth every tear shed. And I learned that it is never, ever too late to defend what you built with your own hands. I am 68 years old, with gray hair, wrinkled hands, and a back that aches some mornings. But I also have something Victoria never had and never will have: integrity. And that is priceless. If this story touched something inside you, if it made you reflect on the importance of defending your dignity, on not letting anyone take what is rightfully yours, leave a comment telling me where you are watching us from. Because stories like this need to be shared so that other people know they are not alone. That family abuse exists, that manipulation is real, but that justice also exists, and that it is never, ever too late to get up and fight for what is yours. Hit the like button if you believe in justice. Subscribe for more real-life stories. And remember, dignity is not inherited. It is built, it is defended, it is protected, and absolutely no one has the right to take it away from you.